Coming Out Stories is a short-run podcast exclusive to the Lesbian Talk Show. The goal of this podcast is to share real stories from real people in the LGBTQIA community. Because this is such a personal journey, I ask that if you do comment on these shows, then please do so positively. The more we stand together and embrace our diversity, the stronger we get as a community. Welcome to Coming Out Stories. I'm Shannon and I'm joined today by the fabulous author Hildred Billings. Hildred, thank you for joining me.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Alright, so you're here to share your coming out story with us today.
Yeah.
About what age did you sort of start feeling like you were not of the strictly heterosexual persuasion?
That's kind of a weird question to answer simply because I grew up in a really, really small town, like 100 students in my whole public high school kind of small town. And when you grow up in that situation, literally every kid you go to school with is somebody you watch pee themselves when they were 4 years old. So there wasn't a lot of dating going on in general. And the whole idea of like going out with this boy or going out with that boy was like, ew, he's like my brother at this point. So, I mean, I had crushes on like, Legolas and, if there was a boy band member who had blonde hair, I was totally into him. But for the most part, I kind of knew from a very early age, especially because my mother was very, I guess you could say, supportive in the endeavor of making sure I knew I could do whatever the hell I wanted and that I shouldn't feel pressured to do anything I didn't want. Was that when I was in high school, I thought, yeah, I don't want to date. I don't want to date anybody. I'm not ready for that yet. So not only did nobody ever ask me out, I didn't ask anybody else out, and it seemed totally normal. Yeah, I didn't really have the whole, I think I might be, not straight idea until college, really. When I thought, okay, I'm ready to start dating now. I'm 19, I'm in college, I'm away from home. I'm going to start dating. Oh my God, why won't anybody date me? And it turned out that I was looking at the wrong people.
Expand on that. When did the inkling start?
I guess I just kind of woke up one day and thought, you know what? I think I'll try dating girls. I didn't really have this like, oh my God, I'm gay moment. Not with myself. That came later with my mom.
Okay. And then when you decided, okay, you're going to start trying to date girls now, then?
Well, that didn't happen because it turns out boys and girls were not interested in me. Yeah, the whole I'm really gay thing started revving up inside of me actually when I met this one girl. And it's the kind of meeting where, 10 years later, I sit here thinking back about her a lot and how she affected my life and how she affected my writing. And the odds of her even remembering me at all are like slim to none. Because we didn't have even like a friendship. It was more like a very one-sided acquaintanceship with myself because I was kind of sort of obsessed with her. Which I feel like is a very, 19, 20-year-old just coming out, just figuring out who you are, what you kind of want to be thing to do.
And because you have nothing to model your behavior on, you have all these intense feelings, but you don't necessarily have the role models in your life to go, okay, this is how one appropriately behaves in this situation.
Yeah, I guess not, because at my college's, GSA, this Gay Straight Alliance, I was the only one there who identified as lesbian. So I didn't have, acquaintances who were gay. I didn't have friends who were gay. Definitely didn't have anybody to kind of tell me, oh yeah, that's normal, I was kind of figuring out all by myself along the way. Everybody else at the GSA was either, a guy, or pretty much all of the women in my school's Gay Straight Alliance were either straight allies, or, they were bisexual, which is fine. But they were living a very different experience from me because most of them had boyfriends and most of them did have experience with dating girls and I didn't, and that was weird to them too.
And then how did it progress from there?
Well, I've pretty much spent my entire college years not doing anything about it because there was nothing to do about it. There's nobody to date. I was basically just hanging out online, talking to people and screaming into the gay void. And I think that's part of the reason why I kind of latched on to anybody I was semi-attracted to, because it was the only way I knew how to express myself as a little young 20-year-old lesbian.
I get that. And then does the story have a happy ending though? I'm starting to feel really sad for you.
Yeah, I mean, if I ever talk about my youth and how lonely and sad I felt, it does feel sad. But, I'm 32 now. I have a long-term partner, and I actually didn't go on my first date until I was around 25, 26. And it was with somebody off OkCupid, and it was terrible. She was not very kind. But luckily, I didn't fall in love with her first, but I had a friend on Tumblr of all places. Somebody contacted me through the messaging system on Tumblr one day saying, "Hey, I really like your blog. I had this 1980s Japanese music blog specifically about women from that time period. And you post pictures, you post, GIFs, you post video links. And one day I woke up to somebody in my inbox saying, "Hey, I love your blog. I love these artists. Thanks for doing this for fans like us." And we started talking, and we never stopped talking. And now we live together, and we have 2 cats, and we're probably going to get married soon.
That's wonderful.
She moved across the country for me, so it must be love.
How long have you two been together now?
It'll be 4 years next month.
So you did get your happy ever after.
Yeah, I like to tell people that I might not have a lot of quantity of dating experience in my life, but I make sure it's quality.
Fair enough. You don't need quantity always. Let's talk about your family when you came out to them.
So there's actually a lot of backstory to me actually coming out to my mom, who's the only one that matters. I guess everybody else had figured it out and did not give a crap at all whatsoever. But my mom, bless her heart, was/is a very oblivious person. She kind of has tunnel vision. What she sees to be real is what's real in her life. And of course, why would she have a gay daughter? That doesn't make any sense. She's just so heterosexual herself. How could that happen? The short end of it was that there was this girl, as there always is, and she was perfect in every way. And she, straight out of a romance novel. We even had a meet cute where I was walking to class one fine 9 a.m. on a fall, autumny day, nice and crisp and cool. The leaves were falling. It was nice and sunny. And I was walking across campus, and all of a sudden, this lady passes me. She was so beautiful. I had to stop and stare. I had to stop and stare at her, just like, oh my God, such beautiful people actually exist in my vicinity. That's amazing. And then I just went off to class and thought nothing about it because, I had never seen her before, so she must not live on campus. She must not go to any of my classes, and who cares, right? Okay, that's nice. I saw a pretty person. But then I come to find out that not only do we live in the same dormitory, we're in the same class, and it turns out we have many of the same mutual interests, and for some dang reason we hadn't met. Because this happened like sophomore year, which is second year of 4-year college, and I don't know how we made it about 13 months without me seeing the most beautiful woman in the world, but here we were. And it was one of those things where I was lonely enough and yet somewhat confident enough in who I was now that I decided to at least pursue like a friendly acquaintance with her just to see what would happen. And what started was about 3 years of me slowly losing my mind and while also kind of, I don't even know how to put it. There's just so many great anecdotes about what happened with her. So a couple years ago, I had written all of these misadventures I had with this woman who shall remain nameless because 10 years later, I am still petrified she's going to find out about all of this and think I'm some weird stalker person. And I wrote all of my misadventures in, okay, I'm going to date myself now. I wrote about everything that happened, all the way from like these conversations we had together to, oh my God, she looked at me today. Oh my God, she blew her cigarette smoke in my direction. Oh my God. I wrote them in my live journal. So I decided about a couple of years ago to go back through and read these entries, and I thought, wow, there's a romance novel here. I just have to change the ending so they actually end up together. And that's kind of how I came up with my book, The One That Ran Away, which is actually compiled of fictional retellings of actual events that happened in my life between myself and this girl who shall forever remain nameless, but in the book I named Shannon, so we'll call her Shannon.
You're listening to The Lesbian Talk Show. TheLesbianTalkShow.com, your hub of podcast information. So that was your first book?
No, that was probably my, 60th book. I've written a lot of books.
Okay. How did you end up writing?
So I've been writing since I was about 4 years old. And I can't remember the day when I took a sheet of 8x11 printer paper, cut it in half, and started writing on it and made it look like it was a real book. And I gave it to my mother and said, here, I wrote you a book. And it was about my grandmother when she was a little girl and a unicorn comes and visits her at night, and they go off on this really weird adventure together. And it kind of just spiraled from there over the years.
And how did you get into writing lesfic?
Well, I got into it just because it was the most natural thing for me to write when I decided to start publishing, because I was in a place in my life, this was probably when I was about 25, 26, maybe 24, and I was in a place where I was very uninterested in men in like every aspect. I didn't want to read about them. I didn't want to hear about them. Didn't want to think about them, just because there's no like reason or event in my life that led to this. It's just who I was at the time. So I would have been incapable. I love to write romance novels. I love to write fantasy novels. And at the time, I would have been totally incapable of writing a heterosexual romance novel like I also do now. So when I decided to pursue, KDP, Amazon self-publishing, it was just such a no-brainer. I was going to write a lesbian romance.
You never actually told us about your mother, though.
No, I was getting up to that. Flash forward to senior year of my college experience, and I show up a week early because I was doing this, early days, helping freshmen get oriented with campus thing. And honestly, it was just an excuse to be there a week early and hopefully, see some friends, maybe meet some cool people before the whole rush of, the school year starts. And I was sitting at this fountain by the parking lot near the gym, and she comes by, the lady who would soon be renamed Shannon, comes riding by on her bicycle, and she stops on the other side of the fountain, and I'm thinking, oh my God, are you kidding me? Why is every interaction I have with her feel like fate? And she gets out her phone, and she's, completely ignoring me. And keep in mind, we've had, more than a few conversations over the years. And in fact, we've had a couple, not intense conversations, but definitely beyond the usual, oh, hi, how are you? How is class? Kind of conversations at that point. And so she definitely recognized me, but she completely shut me out. And it wasn't like a malicious thing. She just didn't care, if that makes sense. Like I wasn't on her radar kind of thing while she was on her phone, and then she gets back on her bike and she rides away. And that was kind of when I had my moment of, it's never going to happen. Like, why am I wasting my time on this? Why do I care so much about talking to her? I need to sort myself out. And of course, it was very hard. It's not so much that it was hard to accept, but it meant like this giant change in my worldview. It meant doing other things. It meant putting my focus on other people and other pursuits, especially since it was senior year, and I had to start thinking about, what am I going to do after college? And I just suddenly really wanted to talk to my mother. And I kind of knew that I couldn't just call her up and start crying without explaining why I was crying. And up to this point, I had been completely in the closet to my mother, which is weird because I was not in the closet to anybody else. Like if you met me, the first thing you learned about me was that I was pretty gay. And I never talked about it at home, not because so much my parents were, socially conservative or they wouldn't understand, but because it just, though I know I mentioned earlier that my mother was very tunnel visiony. She had this idea of what life was like. And while she very much encouraged me to do whatever I wanted and that I shouldn't, as she would put it, she goes, don't settle for a man who makes you feel like shit. Because she had been in that position many times in her life. And if there's anything she wanted to tell me, it was how to avoid that kind of situation. But she still very much had this image of me, getting married to a man and having kids. Even though I had told her 100 times I didn't want kids. I think that finally sank in. But I still hadn't gotten around to telling her I'm probably never ever gonna marry a man, and that's all there is to it. Because I knew it would just create this whole, well, what do you mean by that? Or like, when did this happen? Or, I mean, I guess the thing you have to understand about my mother is that she grew up in suburban Los Angeles during the 1950s, and she just had a very set worldview. And while by all accounts she was a pretty liberal lady, it was a lot harder for her to accept change within her own family. So here I was, sitting on this fountain, thinking about how much everything sucks, how alone I felt, and how uncertain I was of the future. And all I could think about was, I just want to call my mom. So I called her up, and the moment she says, hello, I just start crying. I was bawling in this public square. Luckily, there was nobody else around, so that was nice. And I'm crying, and of course, her reaction is, oh my God, what is wrong? What's happening? Are you okay? Are you hurt? And I just sat there, and then I just kind of sobbed, Mom, I'm gay. That was the thing I was crying about. And her reaction, bless her heart, was there was this pause, and then all of a sudden I hear, you are? I had completely blindsided her with it, which was funny because she took it upon herself later to tell her husband, my stepfather, and a couple other people. I finally had to tell her to stop telling people I'm gay because we do come from a very small town, and I didn't want it to cause problems for her. And apparently everybody had figured it out but her. Because she said they just kind of looked at her like, yeah, of course she is. Can't you tell, Debbie?
And so you out.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. But it felt like this giant weight off my shoulders. And it was so nice to finally just be able to say, hey, Mom, there's this girl I've been in love with for 2 or 3 years. And she's just pretty much broken my heart by just, not acknowledging my existence in a way my 20-year-old self needs to be acknowledged. And she just did the very classic mom, like, well, then they're not good enough for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you say to somebody who's going through the process of self-discovery right now, who's struggling to come out?
I think that's hard to answer simply because so much has changed in the 10 years since I did it. Because it has been about almost 10 years, which it honestly feels a lot longer because so much has changed. And I've been sitting here watching all this change happen. And I see kids back from my old high school, which is still like 100 kids in this very isolated community. And they talk about LGBT stuff. They talk about maybe I'm bisexual, maybe I'm trans, and all I can think is 10 years ago that would have never happened. Absolutely never. You would have gotten the crap kicked out of you. And so, I feel like a kid today, a teenager, a 20-year-old in college, having these kinds of feelings is going through a completely different, well, it's not a completely different process, but I feel like the stakes are different now. And if I was to give advice to somebody who is, Gen Z, Generation Z, whereas, I'm the aging, cynical millennial. I think I'd probably just say, you just gotta be yourself. And there's never been a better time. Just be yourself. Because I had it pretty good. I was on a very liberal campus. I had very accepting friends who just kind of went, oh, okay, you're gay, whatever. But I still had that dread about telling my family, about telling my mom. I'm not saying that doesn't exist today, especially since every family, every community is different. But I do kind of wish I had, the media to back me up. I wish I had politics to back me up, because this is when my state of Oregon had just, made it, they had just voted on a constitutional amendment to make gay marriage illegal. And my parents voted for it, which also played into my thinking that I should probably not tell them for a while.
That is rough.
Yeah.
Okay, so if people have not read your work, what book do you suggest they start with?
Well, I've got some pretty steamy books. That's probably what I'm most well known for is I write billionaire lesbian girlfriend fantasies, I guess you could say. And I do so under the co-written name of both Hildred Billings and my pen name, Cynthia Dane. Because the thing you have to understand is that Cynthia Dane writes male-female billionaire romance, things 50 Shades of Grey, Crossfire series, whatever. And Hildred writes, lesbian romance of different flavors, different heat levels, different lengths, whatever. And when their powers combine, we get hot lesbian girlfriend billionaire fantasies set in the rest of the billionaire universe. And my best-selling book of all time, and this is both in lesfic and in straight fiction, if you want to call it that, is called Hard to Get. And it's about a receptionist in an office building who has a very insistent pursuer in the form of this very flamboyant, very elegant yet exuberant heiress who is bound and determined to make her girlfriend. So by the time this podcast comes out, the sequel will be published. The highly anticipated sequel called Hard to Please should be out. So that's exciting. You should go check that out.
And where can people find you online if they want to connect?
I'm on Amazon, of course. I also have some books that are wide, so to speak, on iTunes, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Google, all that good stuff. Most people come and find me at my Facebook group. That's where I do most of my interaction. And it's a private group just for, privacy's sake. Go figure. And it's called Hildred and Cynthia's Backroom Parlor. And we will allow pretty much anyone in as long as you don't look like a bot or a stalker. So don't let the having to apply to join thing put you off, because I just pretty much get the notification on my phone and go, okay, accept. Yeah, it's on Facebook though. So if you don't have Facebook, the easiest way to get a hold of me is through my email, which you can find on my website, hildredbillings.com.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Yeah, it was great to be here. Thank you.
We thank our guest for sharing a very personal part of their lives with us and hope that you connected with their journey. You can find our guests online. Check the show notes for links. The Lesbian Talk Show is all about sharing love and connecting with one another, and we hope that these stories help you do that. Because this is such a personal journey, I ask that if you do comment on these shows, then please do so positively. The more we stand together and embrace our diversity, the stronger we get as a community. Please know that you are under no obligation to come out. It is a very personal journey, and only you can know when you are ready and whether or not it is safe to come out. If you enjoy these podcasts, consider becoming a patron of the talk show. The link is in the show notes. I'm Sheena, and this has been Coming Out Stories.